Welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Andron. I am here with our normal cast of characters. Bill Haber, who is hiding behind that big black thing because he can't talk today. Levana Tenen over here. Daniel Gill over there. And at least on my screen, and Adele Packer. Welcome back. And we're glad you're all here. We are welcome to the meeting tent. And we are in a continuing discussion of Stan Tenen's research and work for many years with the Meru Foundation. And we have been spending the last 8 or 9 sessions studying the Aleph Bet as he proceeded. But before we get into that, I would like to say something that kind of relates specifically to today. A lot of Stan's work in this area began with his revelation in looking at the text of the letters of the first line of Genesis, which has 28 letters. And 28 number value, kaf and chet, are add up to the word, that is 28 becomes the word koach, which means power. So first of all, it's a testimony to the power of Ted's work that we're here discussing this. Something that many of you who are listening have been part of way longer than I. And the most important prayer that is said when one is celebrating a yahrzeit, a passing of someone, on the 1-year anniversary of that, is the Kaddish. There are many different versions of Kaddish. The interesting thing is there's nothing in the word Kaddish in the whole thing, in the prayer, that talks about death. It's actually talking about life. And the most important line that you have to say is Yehei Shmei Rabbam Avarach Le'olam L'Me'om Hayah, which has 28 letters. Another focus on that. And I bring this up because this is the 1-year yahrzeit just the other day of Stan's passing, or as my teacher used to call it, his graduation to the next. And so we particularly, not that we don't always, but particularly today, dedicate our discussion to Stan. And it's traditional to say that it should be an aliyah to his soul, an elevation of his soul to an even higher plane. I'm sure he was, on one small part of him, was more than happy to escape all the mishigas that we have down here on planet Earth and move on to where he could have some really good discussions with some really heavy-duty, righteous people, tzaddikim up in the Garden of Eden. Speaking of tzaddikim, our main letter today is going to be 2 out of 3 of the letters are Tzadi and final Tzadi, and some say tzaddik and final tzaddik. And there's a whole, as there is with everything, a whole Kabbalistic reason. Does it have the kuf? Does it not have the kuf? And so on. So we're here. That's the beginning. Bill, if you'll put up the 3-tiered Aleph Bet. There are 22 letters in the Aleph Bet, and there are 5 final letters, and so it's a total of 27. And what Stan did was kind of going from base 10 to base 3. We have gone through all of these. We've gone through Aleph, Yud, and Kuf, and so on. So when we divide them up, these last 5 are final letters. So normally we think of Aleph and Tuf as the first and the last. But really there's a relationship between these letters and the final Tzadi of today. So today we're on the 3rd line here. It's moving around right over here. And so we're going to start with Stan's discussion of the Tet, the Tzadi, and the final Tzadi. So let's watch.
Tet, as I said, Tate, T sound, means to complete, refers to a serpent, and it refers to justice in Hebrew. The English equivalent would be J, referring, in this case, to this just, but it also means a tit or tot is in total. Tithe, suckle, total, complete, toot, tout, tune, jet, justice, to stand up. And you see the tit that stands up is this total, is this uprightness, is this justice. That's the metaphor. And that's the general principle. If we apply it spiritually, we get tzaddik, tzadi, pronounced S-T-T-S or T-Z or something of that sort, meaning righteous. It's internal uprightness, referring in English to study or to the zodiac. Those are letter-by-letter cognates. And we have the idea of a spiritual star, a goal, or attractor, an internal attractor. Inner uprightness, completion, righteousness, enlightenment, inner blossoming, inner flowering. And the final tzadi, therefore, same pronunciation, referring to blossoming, tzitz meaning blossoming, is a tree, which is why I use Y for it, because it also looks like a Y. It refers to stood, which is what a tree does, to sturdy. It's the outer flowering or blossoming. It's physical attainment in maturity, able to stand alone and upright. It's a tree. And the tree then bears new fruit in the beginning of the alphabet as that aleph again. It starts the process over.
Okay, now if this is your first day joining us, I would encourage you to go back to the beginning at meruvideo.com, because you can follow each of those lines. We had the 1, the 10, and the 100. Now we are doing the 9, the 90, and the 900, which is the end. Or you can work your way backwards. But I think you'll get a better appreciation of this if you go back to some of the previous ones and figure out which one we're up to. I've never seen anybody formulate a view of a letter in so many points of attraction. You can say, well, this sounds like that letter, or this has this number or this form, but he pulls them all together in those little rectangles, and you think, God, we could discuss that one letter for hours using all of those. Some come from connection to English words to make it more relatable and easy to remember if you don't know Hebrew. Obviously, it helps a little bit if you have some awareness of Hebrew. But we'll start with Tet, which is the 9th letter of the alphabet, and is the first letter of the word Tov, which is good. God created the light, and it was good. God looked at that, and it was good, or very good, on that 3rd day. But it's hidden. If you remember in our previous discussion, the letter prior to this, we had Vav and Zayin representing male and female, then Vav and Zayin coming together in the letter Chet. And now having the male and female coming together, she's pregnant. And this is Tet, which is a hidden, concealed fetus within the womb. And so 9 months of pregnancy, no coincidence, is the one that we think of most often connected to the letter Tet. And when the baby's born, that's Yud. That's the new little baby, the little spark of light that comes out. So there's a story, if you look through the letters, from kind of Aleph through Hey, and then Vav through Tet, you'll find that there are, you could talk it as a conversation, as a discussion, saying this went from here. We had a man, then from man, God created the woman. From man and woman, they got together and they partnered with God. That is the little tiny arrow pointing upward in the letter Chet when it's written in the Torah. And then there is a pregnancy, a hidden, concealed aspect of God that is inside the spark of divinity in that child. And then we get to the birth of that child. And we move into a much broader picture of the world itself. But those first 10 letters really define, or the first 9 letters, define how we came to be in the world, and then so many of the other letters about where we're going. So Dan, you got anything interesting on the letter Tet?
Yeah, I'd love to see, just Idel, if you could show like the hand gesture for Tet
good idea.
first.
See if I can.
Sure.
Let's go behind me. There we go.
Thank you.
Let me see.
Yeah, not pregnant. It's not pregnant at all, right? You're,
There's
you're putting your hand right
certain-
around that baby.
There's a certain tension. Stan talked about the like a coil or a spring, about like a snake about to pounce. And so your description or metaphor of pregnancy, at some point the water breaks.
Right.
But I always think of it as kind of that way we keep things down inside and we don't let them out, and then all of a sudden they come out, not always in the most pleasant ways. So Tet sort of represents that kind of aspect of one's personality where we might just hold things in, and for good reason, for whatever reason. That's just like a little drash for myself when I think about that letter. But it is the only gestural letter that has some tension in the arms and in the back, like holding it. It's yeah, so there's a certain support, but there's also, it's the only one that has that quality. I remember when we were doing these in dance, we used that, that kind of spring out from that shape. So what is that? What does that mean to you, Daniel?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know there's, I remember one of my early teachers, rabbis, he said, what is a tzaddik? He said, some people say a tzaddik is someone who makes no mistakes. He said, well, I think that's just called a waste of time. So there's definitely like what seems, there's this withholding or this great innerness that's happening, with the letter Tet. It's very, very inner. And then it starts to come outwards. And so there's all this inner potential with the letter Tet. I think there's also a teaching by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov where he says, it's very beautiful when someone's pregnant. It's like unbelievable. It's like it's amazing, an amazing thing. He said, but it's not comparable to the birth of a human being. Like it's amazing, but it's only like a precursor. It's a beautiful precursor to life itself. And so I think that's what we have here. And the interesting thing about it, you mentioned tension, is I think this is the only like archetype that seems somehow like it has tension in it. It's not an archetype. It's more like a transition kind of archetype, an archetype of transition, which is kind of what the Shefatal says when he lays out the Sfirot. The book Shefatal, he lays out the 10th Sphira, which is kingdom or kingship or malchut or royalty, power, I guess is a good way to translate it. He lays it out as not the end of the process, but both the end and the beginning of the next process. So malchut in one system is keter to the next system down. So so Tet is kind of, it's in between, it's tense, and I think you find, if you've been around tzaddikim, people who really have some sort of inborn holy energy in any regard, in any religion, someone who really has some sort of deep thing going on, they are intense. They're like, it's uncomfortable a little bit to be around, because they're kind of, even the sweetest amongst them kind of challenge you just by their very being. So I would say it's because they're always in transition. A tzaddik is always moving towards the next thing, the next bit of learning, the next mitzvah, the next good deed, the next helping another person. They just finished one thing and then another person calls them and they're giving them advice, and then they finish that and then someone else needs something, and they're constantly going. So that's intense to be around, because then you kind of think to yourself, well, I just kind of want a vacation and maybe some money or something, and they want much more than that. So
yeah. Yeah, I agree with you about, the intensity of the energy. Even if it's just quiet, sweet, loving energy, it's so deep that a lot of us just aren't prepared to hold that much for you know, I mean, we have only a limited capacity, and hopefully, as we all grow old and grow older, our capacity grows along with it. I mean, that's something. I just want to add one little thing. The word that Stanley always used to use very consistently as the functional meaning, the quick one syllable word functional meaning for tet, is bind, as in bound, you know. And he did a whole page at one point on the word tal. I mean, if you, Daniel just mentioned the shefatel, which is like the flow or abundance of dew. That's the literal translation that's most often used. And so Stanley was thinking of, well, what is tal? Well, okay, tet is bind, and lamed, in the way he distilled it down, is learning. So if shefatal is the flow of life energy that flows through our whole universe, then tal is a drop of bound learning. That,
Wow.
you know, and I always like that metaphor. It's a really easy one to visualize and think about.
Wow, that's amazing.
I
It's really
think if we,
beautiful. Don't you think also of just
Huh.
when you're studying your focus, you know, it's so bound, you know, right to that page, and trying so that it could be a different kind of bound, you know, like
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be like a mission
Connected.
almost, you know? Oh, sorry.
connected to learning. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
No,
along with the word bound, I think the word concealed also is tied in with it. It's considered something that is concealed. It's like a horseshoe, but pointing upward. You know, there's a custom, the people who are into the horseshoe thing, they either hang it downward as if that all that stuff that was concealed is now pouring down into their house. So it sort of blesses the house. Whereas here it's sort of kept up. And that's what a tet looks like. It looks like a, you know, what's there's a description one of these gives, which is a vessel with an inverted rim. And that's kind of what it looks like. And if you look at the letter just by itself, this is the way that it's written in the Torah. And that could be a kaf, the curved part, and a vav. Kaf and vav are 26. Tov, when you reduce it to its gematria, is 17, which is the four-letter name of God, as is 26, but reduced, where a yud is not a 10, but a 1. What's my point? The point is God is good. And just like in English, God and good are the same word, except there's 2 O's as opposed to 1 O when we write it out. So too, the very shape of this letter is sort of a hidden concealment until the birth of the yud. And so naturally it's pulsing. I mean, God's intention was to create the world, and it's pulsing and it's bound, but it's ready to burst. So his tension to that really fits in quite beautifully in the letter.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, I think in a certain way, you know, we certainly have free choice in the world, but we also have a part of us that's bound. We have kind of, I think in mythology, it's sometimes like destiny or whatever people want to use to, it doesn't necessarily mean everyone is, you know, a superhero, but it means that everyone has like a specific mission. I think, I feel like souls have a specific mission, or maybe some don't, but I think some really do. And I think it's like, you know, that's the story of Job, you know, Eov, you know, like you know, you can run to the ends of the earth. You can't get out of you're bound to your mission, period. You know, so we are, I think all of us a bit bound in this world, you know.
And it always remains a mystery. No matter how much of that you feel you're getting to, it's still concealed.
Interesting.
You know? You're like, I got it. I now know how to pray. I read the prayer and I got it. No, you don't. You haven't begun to get it. You know the words, but now let's look deeper and deeper and deeper, like an onion, where you're peeling off layers.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that makes sense in terms of what the Shefatal writes.
Yeah.
that, you know, when you get to the end, you're at the beginning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, any other observations on Tet, or we'll move to our Tzadi?
Uh-huh.
Move
Bill
to our
has something to
tzaddik.
say. In chat, Bill has
Oh,
something.
Bill, during creation, God always said, it is good. Yeah, not great, not awesome, good. This is what we should strive for in life.
Hmm.
That at least and to say good, it means it has a spark of God.
And
You
the
know,
good is
it's,
spelled with a tet.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the Tov
Yeah.
is that word.
Well, we actually
Um,
in the 18 blessing prayer, which is the main prayer, which is what's called prayer by the Talmud, Hatov,
Mhm.
right? That the part of the 18 blessing prayer where you say Hatov,
Mhm.
Hatov means God. The good means God, and actually that's one part of the prayer that you're really not supposed to zip through. Like you're really supposed to focus. There are several parts of the prayer, like the beginning, then the kind of thank you prayer, and then the Hatov. Like those parts, like everything else you can kind of zip through if you want, because you do it, if you do it 3 times a day for years, you eventually end up zipping through things. It's just human nature.
oh
But
boy,
that
Dan,
part you're actually not allowed to zip through. You really have to focus
yeah,
those couple parts. So Hatov, the good.
yeah.
Um,
Hatov Shimcha. It's
yeah.
how great is your name, because your name is the conduit through which the Yud gets down into the world of the Hey. So the shorter version of the Yud Hey and the Vav Hey is Yah, Yud Hey, which is the seed within the womb. Except the letter Yud is outside the Hey. And our goal in life is to turn inward and discover that that spark is in each of us, and thereby help fix the world, which it could use. I think everybody agrees it could use some fixing. And so it is. All right. So now, if we take 9 and we increase it to 90, which is what the Tzadi is, the Tzadi is, according to a number of authorities, they say that is the letter that looks most like an Aleph, most like the, because it's got, let me hold up a picture for those who don't know them. If you take, here's the Tzadi and the final Tzadi by its side. But if you look here, it's got this Yud right over here. Some say it's pointing up, some say it's pointing down. And then you have sort of a bent over Nun next to it. And the, which is our final letter. So it's got the Yud, and it's sort of bent like an Aleph. If we just took this line here, the flat one, and put it here, you'd have an Aleph. It's very close to the shape of an Aleph, and the rabbis talk about the idea of an expanded. I highlighted this one thing. When you look at the 10 sfirot, the 10 forces, the fingers of God, so to speak, that created the world, you have the ones that are intellect, you have the 3 that are intellect, you have 3 that are feeling, chesed, gvura, and tiferet, and you have 3 that are behavior, action. And then when all those come together, it's the full spectrum of the 10 dimensions. They all come together in that final Yud, in that final spark of divinity, that shefatal, that distilled drop of divine water coming into the world, or fire, or however you view it. And 90 means all the 10 sfirot times 10. In other words, each one is like a hologram. It's got all the others interwoven in it. So 90 is a sense of completion. It's coming to the end of something. And it is the end of the very first line in the in the book of Breshit, in the first sentence of the Torah.
Yeah, well, that's the final
Um,
Tzadi. Yeah,
Yeah, the final Tzadi.
yeah.
Um,
It's important in this system to really, for what the perspective that we're dealing with, to actually make a distinction between the letters in the middle of a word and the letters, the final.
right. That's why you have a final. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why each of
And,
only those letters when they appear at the end of the word are changed in terms of their shape. Um,
and and
Adele,
and
you're
and
the
and in what we're dealing
shape.
with in terms of their meaning as well. You know, they are
Yes.
different shades of meaning and serve, you know, if you think of this as a 3 by 3 by 3 or 9 by 9, you know, 9 by 3 structure, however you do it, think Rubik's Cube, they have a different position, a different function in the structure.
Okay.
You know, and so I know that that's something that was an issue for us at the very beginning of the research because Stanley always saw these things geometrically first,
Right.
which meant that, you know, dealing with 3 layers of 9, what that was how he became acquainted with the alphabet and the letters in relationship with each other. And I only mention this right now just to make sure for people who are watching that the perspective that we're dealing with is one that makes a definite distinction between the medial, that's letters that come in the middle of a word, and final letters, that they serve a different purpose in the structure as a whole.
We have a rare video, which we can put up now.
Tzadi, righteousness. Tzadi is apparent when you pull your hands up and tip them back like this. And I can see the tzadi wound around my thumb and my right hand. Now, I think this is sort of the clean hands gesture or something like that, where you're showing the backs of your hands are clean, you're holding them up. It's a kind of purification holding form. And I think I can show you that tzadi. This is the Rashi Nachmanides tzadi right over here. And if you cut it off at about this point, you'll see it quite nice version of one. Just look on your letter charts. Okay.
As he said it, all I thought of was the expression that tzaddik holds up the world, supports the world, and so the holding of the hands up is you know a tzaddik in prayer, you know, a righteous man who you know a telephone reception to higher levels and to God. Those are the hands of prayer as well. One of the most common of those kind of gestures. Now, what does the final tzadi look like?
Well, this is how Lavana has taught it to me as well. I don't know. Let's see this. I had to move before because I was running out of power and I needed to reconfigure to get the cord. So if you can see me. And no, actually the tzadi,
The tzadi is the other way.
they're just facing your thighs. Yeah, the hands are down.
The hands are down, and with the back of the hands basically in the front.
Oh, back of the hands to the front?
Let me take a very good look at my picture.
As I
No,
always
actually, you're right. You're right. It's
Thumbs to
facing
the
the thigh. You're correct.
arms to
You're
the
correct.
thigh. It really, it's so simple. It's just pure presence. You're just standing,
Mhm.
you know? Like when you turn it forward for the final puff, like
Mhm.
that's an affected move. You have to make that move.
Mhm.
But this one, you're just there.
I always thought of it as being rooted,
Yeah.
you know, and if you think of it at the end of the word haaretz, which, you know, if you're gesturing or attempting to gesture the first verse of Bereshis, you have all of these things going on, and then the very last letter, you're rooted, and that's kind of how I always felt about it.
But if you look at these three letters, which are joined vertically in the way he looks at it, you're starting with a tet, where if you just hold up the hand model,
Mhm.
it looks like a letter tet, no matter where you put it. I mean, there's no, it's just there. The way one writes a tet, if you just look at it, and then you're imagining, okay, I'm tuning into the birth of something amazing. I'm reaching my hands upward and I'm bringing it down into the world. And that's what the letter Tzadi does, because the final Tzadi takes that flat line and says, no, bring it straight down. It's a progression of the hidden fetus coming into the revealed world. And it says it in the Torah that, man is the tree of the field, that the tree was the model for humanity in creation. So the idea that we're getting to that point and then pulling it downward and just let it flow, which is that final letter. It just let it flow.
There's if you've watched, I've had the honor to be around many Jewish masters, and when there's a prayer, you wash your hands in the Jewish tradition before you eat, but it has to be from a cup, from a vessel. And it goes back to, I guess, ancient Jewish practice within the temple in Jerusalem, where the priests and would wash their hands, and it's all interesting, very fascinating thing. But I've watched these masters, when they say on the raising of the hands or on the taking of the hands, they all do the gesture for like here, Tzadi. They all do that, and they raise the right hand just a bit higher than the left, to emphasize.
Do they have a reason? What's the reason?
Yeah, to emphasize the concept of love, which it has to do with the right hand. Chesed. That many of the Jewish practices emphasize the right side, and many of them, and it's just an interesting realization that that's the gesture for tzaddik or tzadi. Is this kind of raising of the hands or showing the hands. I guess it could be almost like a gesture of like openness, like I'm open to everything I am, for good or bad. I'm not hiding anything. I'm not, my inside is like my outside, so to speak, yeah.
Actually, when I said that before about tet, that it looks like that, you're going from here to here to there.
Oh, cool.
There's just that whole birth revelation kind of thing. And it's, if you let your hands hang, we kind of think, okay, we're done with all these fancy things that we're doing, and now our hands are just hanging, but they're anything but that. They're, when you're doing a chemical reaction thing, the distillation, the final drop that comes into the world, is the most important part. Not all the things that were used for catalysts before, but it's there.
Yeah. There's a great story of a, it's almost like a gesture of like, please, like you're kind of desperate in a way, There's a great story. There was once a Chassid. It's kind of a funny story. And he was really down his luck. He couldn't make a living, and he lost his house, and his wife left him, and his children were gone out of the house. He couldn't talk. No one would talk to him. So oftentimes the Hasidim on the afternoon preceding the Sabbath, they go and immerse themselves in a ritual bath, which is something that Hasidim do. And so he went, and he goes into the bath. He figures like, at least I can still do this, and he comes out, and his clothes are gone. Someone has stolen his clothes. So he quite literally has nothing left. So at first he breaks down. He's sitting on the floor. He says, this is like, and then a couple moments later, this other man is walking towards the mikveh, and he sees this naked guy outside the ritual bath dancing and singing with incredible joy, And he says, he gives him something. He says, what do you do? Are you crazy? What are you doing? He said, well, when someone stole my clothes, I realized I had nowhere left to go except up. So I know my luck is about to change. So that's kind of like, after when you finally get to that point where you're raising your hands, you're just at the end of the week, you work so hard and you're at the end, and right after you do that, then you have a meal, right when you're at the end, then something good always comes. And that's the tet.
Yeah,
That's the tet.
yeah.
Right after the tet, you're at the end. It's the end of it's the end. It's the transition. Then comes the tzadi. Then something good comes, or the precursor to the final tzadi where you can let go and say, oh, everything's going to be okay.
Shavat vayinafash. God finished creating and he breathed out. Whew, done. Or beginning, as the case may be.
That's good. Yeah.
I had a thought, Michael, about it's kind of an aside, but it's about the hand gestures as well. And that is this idea of washing, that I just learned that you take the vessel in your right hand and you pour it
on the left.
And that also is symbolic of the power of chesed, that you want chesed to dominate and be the leader of the gesture. And then I was just thinking of all the gestures that were slightly overlapping, like nun, the right arm is in front, or vav, the right hand is in front. And I'm trying to think if there's other ones that were,
Samach,
the right arm is on top. And I just always just noted that as something that Stan had requested, but now I'm just getting this little aha, that the beauty of the symbolism, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, doesn't matter. Just the concept that chesed would be have the upper hand. So to
yeah. That's amazing. Didn't Stan also talk about the bait and the tzaddik forming an aleph?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The final tzaddik.
In the final tzaddik. Yeah.
Yeah. This concept that the snake that eats its tail, the round, that round symbol. Yeah. Which is a samech.
The bet. I'm using a pencil to point, which doesn't work. Okay. So the bet is the first letter of Bereshis bara Elokim, et hashamayim v'et haaretz, is the bet, and the last letter is shamayim va'aretz, which is the final tzadi. But this is more than just the word aretz. It's the aratz. The aleph is now running, and now you have 2 feet on the ground, and it's running to impact on the world and sweeten the world in some way and help repair the world. So there's almost everything's connected. Everything is a story, and we need to go into it. The Aryeh Kaplan describes this beautifully, how the 10 fingers, when the priests do the priestly blessing, and they use, who knew that they knew Star Trek? But that is obviously where Leonard, if you haven't heard the story, that's where Leonard Nimoy got it, was the way that they held their hands this way. And the hands, 10 fingers, 10 sphirot, 10 divine energies that are intelligent energies, and they're in stasis like this. But when you open the hands, and he defines this very clearly, he says it's for the hands of prayer, it's the hands of blessing and healing, therefore, blessing in general, just, when you, on a Friday night, if you're blessing the children in your home or before a holiday, you put your hands on their head, whether you're a Kohen or not, and you state their name, which is the phone number, the user ID to who they are is that name. And you're calling their soul. In other words, you're not talking to the kid. You're talking to the soul inside the kid. So you call out his name, the name that he was given, either at a bris for a boy or when she was born for a girl. But the hands of prayer, the hands of healing, and the hands of blessing, which I guess is a kind of healing too, is taking that out. And when the hands are full, when all the letters that are depicted in the moving alphabet are enlivened that way, The hologram is awake. Every one is 10. Then you reach, and then the Tzadi, which is what we call that nine, that either the 90 or the 900 for the final one. Then the Tzadi gets the 100, the Kuf, which is a value of 100. So what is a tzaddik? What is a righteous, elevated human being? It's one who has awakened all of those sfirot in every manner of his life or her life.
Hmm.
So it's hopeful. It's a prayer unto itself just to say that. Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, well, so the priestly blessing is also connected, says the Shefatal again, directly to this whole system. It's like the blessing is so beautiful. It's hatov. It's only good. There's no judgment at all in the priestly blessing. That's why it's the priestly blessing. And so he points out that there are 14 bones in the fingers of each hand, which when put together are 28, which relates to the first pasuk of the Torah, which relates to the Heshmei Rabbah, the Kaddish prayer. So it's a big deal, the priestly blessing. And as a matter of fact, the first example of a drawing of a hand that we have in our tradition is with the Shefatal, printed the first edition. That's the first time we have a hand printed relating to Torah, and it's the exact same system, which of course now I know and we know that goes back even farther to the 13th century in Spain. But this priestly blessing is actually at the center. And when we say, again, it's the 28-letter name of God, which is the filling of God's name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. The milui of God's name is 28 letters, right? You spell out the word name of God, then you spell out the spelling out of the name of God. That's 28 letters. So it stands right at the center of the priestly blessing, stands right at the center of this. I mean, it's the desire for hatov, and it stands at the center of what I think is actual religion or spirituality. It's not the sharpness, it's not the strictness, it's not the discipline. It's the good, right? This wanting to receive good and to give good, and wanting that for everyone. That's right at the center of what this is all about. There's a quick story. Many years ago, I was at a Chabad house, and it was the second night of some Yom Tov, and the previous day they had done the priestly blessing with the members of the Eastern congregation, meaning in Iraq and even in Persia and in Yemen. And then also with the Sfaradim, the Spanish Jews or descendant of Spanish Jews, they do the priestly blessing outside of Israel every day, right? So it's a neat thing. You go to a Sephardic or a Eidot Mizrach Eastern congregation synagogue, and you get the priestly blessing every day. It's really, I think it makes a huge difference. But the Ashkenazim, the European Jews, don't do that. We do it on holidays. So this was the second night, and so there was this one guy there, I forgot his name, but he was, he was one of the straightest people I've ever met in my life. But he was a Cohen. I mean, super, super straight, And I think I had a ponytail at that point, and I was pretty out there. I actually still am, but he was like super, super straight, and
just shorter hair.
No hair, I guess would be which where I work. The kippah went shorter, to a cap, or gray. So you don't see the So the natural yarmulke that's formed on my head. No, so he's totally, really, he's a nice guy, the sweetest guy ever. He has a family, and he comes, but he's studying, he's doing graduate work somewhere in that area. And so he would come often to Chabad, and he sits down next to me, and there's Kiddush and Hamotzi. And he says, Daniel, I think you might be the only person who can understand what I'm talking about here. He said, a very strange thing happened to me yesterday. He said, I'm a really straight guy. I don't believe in anything so spiritual. I believe, but I keep it over there, It's a way of life. I live this way, but I not too emotional. Actually, he knew himself pretty well. So he said, when I was doing the priestly blessing yesterday, when I put my hands out, and I said the blessing, I shot up in the air 100 feet. My consciousness shot out of my body, and I could feel this unbelievable energy come through me. And the moment it ended, I snapped back down.
Wow.
And he said, I don't know what that means.
His question should be,
You
how do
know?
I do it again tomorrow?
Right. Well, he wasn't, what's neat about the story is like he wasn't seeking that. It just
Right.
really happened naturally when he was just open to giving the blessing, and he did the movements, the hand movements, again, the hand movements to do that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden something energetically shifted, and he literally had an out-of-body experience. And not because he was hurt or anything, just because it was his mind had to be removed so that the energy could probably come through. That's my kind of interpretation of it, because it was beyond him. It was like divine energy, Shefatal, and so there is this connection between the hand movements. The one hand movement we have prescribed, it's very, very specifically prescribed. It's actually straight out like this, like a Zion. Actually, it's not here. It's straight. Has with it a tremendous amount of actual energy that goes with it. So I feel like what Stan discovered here is this almost like underlay of like the energetic aspect of Judaism. That these hand movements have deeper meaning than just, I can do them in my mind and they give me tremendous meaning, and you could learn different things. I think that's a beginning level of them, and then maybe underneath is the emotion, and then I think underneath the emotion is this energy. Again, there are these three levels, the physical, and then the spiritual, which is really learning based and meaning based, and understanding your life in different ways, and then the archetypal is just almost like elemental energy. Again, the Shefatal like leads the way in kind of relating these deeper understandings of what Stan found, thankfully. Anyway,
We have now explored all 27 letters, and this series of the meeting tent kind of comes to a closure of this particular subject, which became the basis for a lot of other things, and we're still contemplating where we're going from here. It would be great if everybody could share just their feelings of going through this relationship of the letters and how it might have impacted on you personally, being part of this, as well as just in general. As some of you have been living with this wonderful stuff for decades, and to a deeper understanding of Stan's work as a whole. So I guess I'm the newbie, so I'll start. And I don't know if you're planning to crank out or croak out something, Bill, when we get to you. But I got to the book and then reached out to Stan a little over a year ago. Sadly, leaving not too much time to become one of his last very devoted students. And going through this way is different than reading it. You read it and you say, oh, I see what he's got. He's got the Rubik's Cube thing, and now open it up and let's look at it. But going through it this way and having different perspectives, talking at it from music and movement and just general wisdom that everybody is sharing, has made it more concrete. I got to get a set of hand models and start moving with this, because so much of the movement is Tai Chi like, and for me, having spent over 50 years doing that, to me, that I want to feel that movement with the form. I do. So much of what I'm doing anyway is the form. I just don't know what letters it is, and I'm getting there. And maybe we'll be able to spend a session where we just kind of look at the alphabet. Everybody get up off their chairs and just guide us through all the letters, and more forcefully, more softly, and feeling it enter into your being. I know Adele lives in that world. He's trying to take an idea and express it in movement, as Dan does in music. And I'd love to be able to just kind of go through it a few times with the people on the video, because it's becoming more and more internalized. And using these last three letters as the example, it's inner, and we want to get it to where it's outer. The last word of the priestly blessing is shalom, is completion, is wholeness, is peace. And ultimately, that's what we want. We want to be able to, embrace it in any way we can without ego stuff getting in the way and blocking it. As your friend was discovering that day, when he got out of the way, suddenly he went flying. So who's the next newbie? Is that you, Adele?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm newbie about 6 years.
Okay.
Ago, I met Stan's work, and I would say that I would vote for going through the entire alphabet in gesture, because the transitions from one to the other, you see how the body, it moves all the way around the body, up and over, and it can be a bit of a meditation, just the repetition
sure.
of all the letters and doing it. And I'd be happy to guide that if you would like to do that. I just want to say that we were just discussing this before but it wasn't recorded. And that is the wonder of the fact that Stan Tenen passed on the 28th of Shabbat. And we've talked about the meaning of 28 and the 28 letters of the opening line of Genesis, which was his lifetime study, and all the other amazing things that you talked about, 28, Michael and Daniel. And just to know that coincidence is, it's pretty astounding coincidence. And then I'll just say briefly that my exposure to the letters and the study that I've done in the last 4 years, and now expanded even greater to other masters and how they looked at the letters. And it's just really much bigger than I ever thought when I tripped upon it. I had no idea how great a study it would be. And I love that idea of the bound into study, like I really get lost in it, and in a really beautiful way. I plan to continue these discussions, because every time I meet with all of you, I'm writing things down, I'm learning things. It's really been fantastic. Someone else can go.
Dan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think it's but I say that the concept of Moses, or as we say, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, our teacher, was that he's one of the few beings that can reach a place like really beyond himself. Like he, in a sense, Moshe Rabbeinu had, it sounds weird, in a sense, he had nothing to do with what came through him. But he's the only one who can do that. It's most teachers, it doesn't negate other teachings. Most teachers can, it comes through them, and it's very fun. You're around a good teacher, someone has a beautiful personality, and they teach you something. It's amazing, and they need their personality to filter through an idea to their students, and it's amazing. But Moshe Rabbeinu is like a different thing. It's like it's the essential of the essential knowledge, or even more than that, the essential of the essential of the essential knowledge. It's like the core. And I think that Stan was on that level with this material. It has nothing, I happen to love him dearly, he's a good friend, but it has nothing to do with, we vibed, but as people, but it has nothing to do with that. He was able to tap into something entirely without his ego. And I think that's a hard thing for most people to deal with. And what we're left with now is this incredible key to knowledge or information or data or whatever it is. Like I can't emphasize enough what a gift this is, like to humanity and to learning. I mean, my learning of everything, quite simply, like just went like from like this to completely open based on even just a cursory understanding of the material of Meru. It is the key for knowledge. It's just it's unbelievable. Like it just changes how you, all of a sudden you start to see the basis for knowledge and the basis for learning on this super essential uh, uh, place, or from this super essential place, and it opens up and connects everything. So it's not like, well, this rabbi said this, or this teacher said that, or this guru said that, and then Stan says this, and like it's not on that level. Now that Stan is gone from this world, I can say it like this is like the essential kernel of knowledge. Quite simply, this will open up all other knowledge. And I think we can just we can really say that. I can honestly say that right now. And if you look at Rashi's interpretation, Rashi's Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, Shlomo the son of Isaac, Solomon the son of Isaac, who was a great commentator, the foremost commentator on the Torah. If you look at what he says in the first on Genesis 1:1, he says, "Koach ma'asav higid la'amo, latet lahem nachalat goyim." The power of his action, he gave over or told to his nation, right, to give them the inheritance of all the nations. So it's not lost on me that Rashi was also referencing the concept of the 28 of the koach of the 20 of the priestly blessing, and of this deep kernel of inner knowledge. I think is actually finally revealed with what Stan found.
I'm
Sure.
sure.
It's if we were going in backwards order of who knew it, but that's fine. Yeah, you can end up okay. Well, first I want to say that it has been a wonderful journey for me so far to deeply explore this work that I lived immersed in for decades, and actually hear what other serious and deep and creative people get out of it and continue to get out of it. I mean, it gives me the blessing of hearing perspectives from the outside, as opposed to, I mean, it's part of me, it's sort of like, the fish can't see the water. And that's been my position, for decades. On the subject of learning and the alphabet as Stanley explored it and continued to explore it, one of my favorite things that used to happen, that we used to do, is basically to just either go through sources, or go through Torah, or take particular words that just happen to strike his fancy at the moment, and pull them apart and reconstruct them. And as I've told other people here, I have a collection of thousands of 3x5 index cards where he was exploring all of these connections and expansions. And some of those expansions are based on the letters. Some of those expansions are based on graphics expressing the letters. I mean, it's a very rich thing. And hopefully, at some point, we can find and create a way of accessing them in a way that people can understand all the various different types of metaphor that he used. For me, I think I do tend to think of the letters in terms of the structure that they create. But mostly, I think for me, as I said at the very beginning of what I was saying, that being able to participate in this exploration with others, new fish, fish coming out of the water, visiting fish, I don't know, um, that has really opened my eyes to how this work can blossom and grow, even without my husband's physical presence. And I'm very grateful for that. And I'm grateful to Bill for taking the initiative and saying, hey, I want to do this. And to Michael and Daniel and Adele for being our group. Because I've learned a lot.